Today we're doing Infestissumam, the second album by Ghost. I've already ranked and reviewed Opus Eponymous, so check out that video if you would like. Today we're going to be doing something slightly different in terms of the way we approach this album. Last time I went through all of the tracks, starting from my least favourite and ending up with my favourite. This time I'm going to be going through the song in order of the album and describing things that I like, things that I don't like, and then I will reveal my ranking, my order from least favourite to favourite at the end. You should be able to get a good idea of which ones I like more than others, but it just makes sense for this album to go through it chronologically, especially following on from my Opus review. Overall, this album is much better than Opus Eponymous. I never used to think that. I used to think that Opus was better and had more songs that you would want to listen to, and that whilst this album was a step up production-wise, it didn't have many songs that were really standouts. And my opinion, especially in the face of recent Ghost releases, has completely changed on that now. Infestissumam is now one of my favourites from Ghost. I again think of it as a treat, much like Opus. It's not very long, only 47 minutes in length. Production-wise, as I've said, the quality is much higher in this album, and there's also a lot more interesting arrangements, textures, timbres, instruments coming in that we never had in the last album. And the songwriting is more progressive, which is always welcome. It is quite a unique time for Ghost in these first two albums. I'll get into some of the melody choices to do with the vocals, but there is a real focus on ambience, environment, the texture of the sound to build your immersion. This album is much more transporting than the original. The original sounds like you're listening to a first album. It sounds like you're listening to a group of people make music about a certain topic. This album has a much richer soundscape, and that soundscape isn't really replicated in any of their future releases. Ghost albums tend to have their own identity sonically for each album, and this is the last album where it feels like we are in touch with what we could call Ghost's roots. The satanic imagery and lyrics are really at their strongest here, and much like in Opus, we have a narrative being strung across these songs. So whereas Opus was about bringing the Antichrist into existence, Infestissumam is about what happens now that the Antichrist has been born and brought into the world. Now that the devil is among us, how will society and men change? This album is quite similar to Opus in many ways, but is also a foil to that album. There's a similar number of songs, and the album is structured rather similarly, certainly in the opening where we have an instrumental track. When we think back to Opus and we think of Deus Culpa, that is this very warm and slow, reversed piano, ambiguous track. You're not really supposed to know what to make of it, but what it does do is it slowly hypnotizes you into the soundscape. Infestissumam is completely different. It is the polar opposite. It is really cool and my favourite introduction that Ghost have done. I mentioned in the previous review about how I love the choral chanting and how choruses and choirs have been used throughout history in the context of religion. It gives you this feeling that there is a congregation singing this. This is not just a band writing songs about the Antichrist. This is a movement. It is a collective thought. And these people are gathered here to worship this. It's my favourite texture that Ghost bring into their music. And I love that we open the album with that lower register, deeper choral chanting as if we're summoning something from underground. And this time, this chorus, this choir is blended with the guitars, and the guitars are playing these melodies. The drums have come in and we're playing the snare on each downbeat, which is something that happens quite a lot in this album, stylistically quite different from the first. That is a common way in the percussion that we build tension and escalate in this album, and it is the perfect transition into Per Aspera ad Inferi. Using Latin is something that we did do in Opus. We did it in Conclavi con Dio, which I didn't really mention, but the use of Latin functions as a world-building technique, essentially. If Ghost and Papa Emeritus is representing a satanic church, an opposite to the Catholic Church, then the use of Latin is presenting the band as a foil to the Catholic Church, who we know use Latin, write in it, read in it, speak in it in the Vatican. So it's also lending credibility to the band that they know what they're talking about when they are writing these songs. So the first thing that strikes me is something very similar that struck me in Opus, which is that the verse is much more full instrumentally than anything from that previous album. We have a keyboard, we have an organ, and we have a full band all playing together, and it feels really epic, especially with any choral chanting that we happen to have in the back. I really do like this song and the snare pattern during the chorus. It doesn't feel like a song, much like, Stand By Him or the more conventional Ghost songs sound like songs. It feels like an extension of Infestissumam, that opening track. It feels like we are still tone setting for this album. And as far as it achieves that job, it achieves it really successfully. The next song is Secular Haze, and this is a really cool song. It always kind of throws me off guard when I first listen to the song because it's not exactly how I remember it. And when I first start listening, I'm like, oh, this doesn't sound quite as good as I remember. Maybe this is actually kind of a mid-track. But as it progresses, it always wins me over. And by the end, I'm like, actually, Secular Haze is definitely a very good song. The 6/8 gives it a creepy circus vibe, which I love. And the organ, the keyboard is fulfilling that role as well. I like that we refer to Satan as a fog weaver. That's a really interesting name that I haven't heard before. And Secular Haze is a really clever title. The guitar solos in this are also interesting. There's a cool tremolo section in it, which we certainly hadn't heard before in the first album. So by this point, we've developed the style of drum playing, and we've also developed the style of the guitar solos. They have a very different style in this album. I think that the style of guitar solo that Ghost would go on to be known for is this combination of the technical elements we hear start to emerge in Infestissumam and also the melodic solos we heard in Opus, Satan Prayer being a very good example of that. The next song is Gigolo Ha Megiddo. From memory, I never have an easy time from memory trying to remember how this song goes, but whenever I hear it, it is recognisable. And it has a really groovy bass line, which is something that we never heard before. So that's a new addition to this album. Much groovier than anything before. Again, the guitar solo in this song is really good and it is much more technical. The most memorable thing about this song are the explicitly sexual lyrics. They are kind of silly, but also they are heavily linked to satanic material, and it is also in keeping with that theme of how is the world starting to change now that the Antichrist is born. So when you consider it in juxtaposition to the material heard in Opus, it serves a purpose. The next song is Goulet Zombie Queen. So this song is really different. Even when I think of Ghost's full discography, this still is a really black sheep song. It's very unusual. The song has two sections, Goulet and Zombie Queen. And the fact that it's divided into two sections is a much more progressive choice than anything Ghost have tried so far. I used to always wonder if the song was too long, but I've come to the conclusion that it's not, and it's actually perfectly paced. The song is providing you throughout with something different. There's this slower, relaxing intro. There's the change of gear into the faster section. There is a new groove in the faster verse. There is a new epic climbing chorus. There are some instrumental sections for some fills. We have a deep register choir section for the Zombie Queen chants. We finish with a big epic rendition of the chorus at the end, and we have an instrumental outro that is extended following the melody of the chorus until we end the song. I wish Ghost still made songs that were as experimental as this. I guess the closest thing recently would be Umbra, but that just kind of sounds like a jam, like an improvisational song. It's most like Respite on the Spitalfields if you were to draw a direct comparison, but even today this song is very unusual for them and I appreciate it a lot. The next song is Year Zero. The song has such a dark tone to it. This is definitely one of my favourite Ghost songs. In fact, if you were to ask me to distill Ghost's sound into one song to show someone, I'd probably pick this. Or at least this is what I want Ghost to sound like. Like, you could pick more recent, bigger songs to get across how they sound across their full discography, but this is how I want them to sound. I feel like Year Zero is the gold dust in these first two albums. Everything has been building up to them being able to make this song. And this is why I listen to Ghost. I listen to Ghost because it is only them who can pull off a song like this. I love choral chanting, so of course I love the opening choral chants to this song. I love using the different names of the demons. Again, I love this world building that they are trying very hard to incorporate into their songwriting. It sounds so strange to describe a band as world building within their songs, but that is strangely what Ghost do in these albums. They are building up a lore and a mystery and a story around their characters and around their albums and songs. It's very unusual and another reason to listen to them and what makes them so different. And the chorus is exactly the kind of on-the-nose messaging that I want from a campy, overtly satanic band. I mean, when your chorus is literally "Hail Satan," you don't need to do any more. Like, you're only going to be able to make that song once, and they really did it perfectly. The next song is Body and Blood. This is a very underrated song. I love the groove on this song, and the chorus is really catchy. It's probably one of the most catchy choruses Ghost have ever come up with. I definitely find myself humming it in my head a lot of the time. I can see why you would think it's repetitive though. Personally, I really like the song and the chorus, so I don't mind that it is, but if it isn't working for you, I can see how this song could be too long. The next song is Idolatrine. This has a really cool triplet intro that I like, and I think the song has a cool groove. It also has quite a hooky vocal melody. You have to admit that the vocal melody is quite catchy. I don't think the chorus is catchy, but that melody is. I do think the "Suffer Little Children" part is a bit repetitive, but it's okay. And we're using a biblical line as well and trying to invert the meaning of it, so I appreciate that as well. I have no idea what Idolatrine is actually about though. I've tried to work it out and I still don't really know, so if anyone knows what Idolatrine's about, you can let me know. The next song is Depth of Satan's Eyes. This has some good things in it. It has a very cool chorus. I think that the chorus is dark and catchy at the same time. I like the mini guitar solo section with the higher vocals than we've heard before, but the actual guitar solo is the weakest on the album. I mentioned earlier about how the vocal melody choices are intentionally creepy, and you really get that sense in this song. This song has very strange choices for the vocal melody. They seem quite dissonant actually, and not what you would initially predict. I think that is intentional, and it's supposed to sound creepy. It's not supposed to sound like a happy or epic song. This is supposed to be a devil worshipping song. It's just interesting to point out because they do abandon that past a certain point in their discography. And this is one of those songs that uses the snare to accentuate each downbeat to escalate again. It does that at the end, which I like. I think that's a cool sound. And the final track is Monstrance Clock. I do like this song. I think it has a grand scale. It is a bit too repetitive for me, but there is something that I like about it, which is this song feels like for the first time the band is directly calling out to the listener. So before, it sounds like a band who is talking about their thoughts and who they're worshipping and why and what they're doing and what they do and don't like. But in this song, it feels like they are deliberately calling out to you to come together as one. It feels like they're trying to communicate with their fan base. Ghost have written in the third person quite a lot, and in this song, it feels like they're more directly referencing the second person, which is something they will go on to do more in some of their future songs like Cerise. So when the choir comes in this song, it sounds, like I said before, like a congregation coming together to sing this song, and this no longer feels like a band who's just starting out. It gives the sense that the band has found an audience. And I think it's a really fitting end to this album, and also clearly marks the point where the band would start to become a lot more famous. They also played this as the closing track when I saw Ghost live, and so that feeling that I've just explained was definitely validated in that experience. Time for the ranking. Oh, not time for the ranking actually. There is another track that's sort of on this album, but not really, called La Mantra Mori, and I thought I might as well mention it because I really don't like that song, if you can even call it a song. I know it's a mantra, and so it just repeats, and that's the point, but that doesn't excuse it from being completely unlistenable and really, really, really boring. So I just thought I'd get that out there. Anyway, time for the ranking now. At number 10, if we must include it, we have La Mantra Mori. Obviously, it's not a song. And at number 9, we have Into the Depth of Satan's Eyes. At number 8, we have Idolatrine. At number 7, we have Gigolo Ha Megiddo. At number 6, we have Monstrance Clock. And above Monstrance Clock at number 5 is Body and Blood. At number 4, I've put Secular Haze. And for the top 3, third place is the opening tracks, Infestissumam and Per Aspera ad Inferi, because I think of those as one connected piece. Certainly if you listen to the record, they play that way. At number 2, there is Goulet and Zombie Queen. And at number 1, there is Year Zero, which is not a surprise. So let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know your rankings below. Let me know if you agree or disagree. And stay tuned for next week's rank and review of Meliora. If you want to see that video, and if you liked this one, then like and subscribe. And thank you for watching.